Every act of violence, evil that we have seen manifested through some of the worst characters of humanity, every act is not that person. It's actually, we're actually witnessing the manifestation of a person's innocent response. So what I mean by that is when you're innocent and something happens to you, your response is justice. Your unnatural response is justice. No justice, no peace. Something happens to you or somebody you love, you usually feel that inclination to want them to get what they gave, to pay back. Jesus said, like, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say love your enemy. So Jesus was saying, you're saying, somebody takes your eye, you take their eye. Somebody knocks out your tooth, you knock out their tooth. That was the way that people dealt with justice back in the day. And Jesus was dealing with that human inclination that is not our true nature. It is manifestation of ignorance. Because when I respond to what was done to me without recognizing the seed that was planted, I find myself reproducing after its likeness. It's almost like a tree next to a ground and a fruit called evil and offense and pain and suffering and rejection and hate. And the fruit dropping from that tree hits the ground. The ground gets offended, and what offense does is it sucks up the fruit or the seed in the fruit and absorbs it in its ground, and it no longer becomes innocent. It now becomes a progressive reflection. So when you see someone doing evil, to them it is good, because they're manifesting the response to their pain. Whether someone was beat, whether someone was rejected, whether someone was raped, whether someone lost loved ones to war, or all these evil crimes that are done to the innocent. If the innocent doesn't do the opposite, then it will reflect even its thoughts, even if it stays within its thoughts of that person deserved, he gonna get what he deserved, you know. That itself is that nature, that fruit coming from that tree, and it's trying to find a home in that heart. Even if that person just thinks it, it's like they're processing and premeditating what they may or may not be willing to do. And so this is something we are to be aware of as we hear news about what people do, as we experience personally what people do, as we experience personally what we do. It's important not to grow offended and not to judge, so that we're not putting ourselves under that same lens, that same identity, that false identity. Let's say someone's assassinated we usually seek for justice for that person who assassinated him to either get prison time, confinement, or have the same death done to him. It's important to watch within, to watch our response within, because it's more than just our thoughts and our response. It's that seed planted in the ground, and that seed is vibrating. It's progressive maturity. It's maturation process. Hallelujah. It's vibrating how it is going to mature in you through these thoughts. This person did all this bad things, and the tapes are coming out, and they, Puff Daddy, he killed Tupac. He killed Biggie. Whatever people say of something that somebody done to demonize that person and to say, I found out the truth. And let's expose him and let's put him away. Those very inclinings is how the innocent becomes a victimizer. Because, like I said, every person who's manifesting evil they started as that innocent ground, like a child, a baby who had nothing in themselves to produce. All they had in themselves was to inherit seed that was sown throughout their generation. And some people were sown no father, which a father is meant to be a gardener of the heart, to deal with all the seeds in the ground so that they grow up with good ground, as good ground for the seed of truth to dwell in. But with no father, all these seeds go in the heart untouched. And so all you see in society is manifestations of trees bearing evil fruit. You don't see necessarily the lack of tending to the ground, the lack of parenting, the lack of a culture, the lack of love. You don't see it as a deficiency. You should. But society exposes it as a bad tree. This is a bad tree. Let's cut the tree down. Let's destroy it. But what we don't understand is what we're trying to destroy is a system that is reworking itself generationally. And it's not the person, it's the system. Evil is not human. Evil is a system of ignorance reproducing itself. A system of darkness reproducing itself. If someone's in darkness and they offend someone who's in darkness, who doesn't know the truth of who they are, then their immediate response will be to reproduce. To want, even if it turns into a good form of reproduction. Some of the most evil manifestations are seen or are not seen in good, because good is trying to do away with evil. Good is the hidden part of evil. When someone says, I want to be a police officer because I want to avenge what happened to my dad or what happened to my brother. My brother was killed by a drug lord, and so I want to be a police officer to strip out that whole society of drug dealers. So a lot of motivations is of the same tree. It's just conceal in good. And so it's important as we progress that we recognize how we are responding to the brokenness of man. If we can't restore, if we can't see a person's true design, which is God in them, if we can't see God in them, then we can't restore them. So we ought to take no part in relating to their story, because all we're doing is mirroring their ignorance. It's a parable that I use of a fish that jumps on the surface of the earth out of the water, and it hits someone's foot, and you got people around the person saying, "Ha ha ha, he's flopping! Look at him flopping! Ha ha ha!" You know, they're participating in commentary of what's happening, but because they don't have any understanding that the fish belongs in the water, they're not participating in picking it up and bringing it into water. But the man who the fish falls on his foot, you know, it hurts. His gills are sharp. It's cutting his foot. It's like, he's offended or hurt by the experience of this fish that is outside of water. And so he looks down and says, "Oh man," picks the fish up, holds it tightly so it stops squirming, and so he takes it back to the water, throws it in the water, and restores it. That is how we are to respond to brokenness. You know, if I'm in a dark room and someone steps on my foot, do I judge them for that? Someone stumbles to find their way in the darkness, do I cut off the head? Do I off with the head? Or do I find the light switch to help us both? Because maybe the offense that we feel is in the same darkness of the one who offended us. And therefore, that's why we practice forgiveness relationally. Not just I forgive them, but hey, I know this is what you did, but I recognize that wasn't you. I know who you truly are in the light. And I forgive the actions because I know who you are. You know, and if we can relate it on this basis and see on this basis and judge on this basis, then we will progress in being a society of restoration and not a society of cancel culture. Cancel culture is an ignorant culture. Cancel culture is a culture that reproduces after its offense. And that's not human.